Hi, I'm C.C. Péan, and this is Reclaiming Your Health. Good evening and welcome everyone. Welcome to Reclaiming Your Health. We're so happy to have you here with us this evening. I'm so excited this evening because I have a special guest.
Yay, me, Stacy Campbell.
Stacy Campbell Marshall, my best friend. Anybody who knows me,
you're
my best
Thank you.
friend. Anybody who that's an inside joke. Anybody who knows me knows Stacy is my best friend, and we've been friends for years. And she is best friend, sister, confidant, advisor, cheerleader, all those things rolled up into one. And she actually is in town because she came to visit for her birthday. And she is in town from the Bahamas. And so it is apropos that this evening, what we are doing is we're bringing a little bit of island flavor to Reclaiming Your Health. Those of you who know me know that I am a chef that celebrates the African diaspora in my cooking. And of course, the Bahamas would be part of the diaspora. One of the interesting things about this recipe, this evening we're making corn fritters. And one of the interesting things about this recipe, if you are somebody who has ever traveled to the Bahamas, one of the things that they are known for are their conch fritters, right? It's conch, not conch.
Right, conch.
Conch fritters. They're known for that. And so, but if you're somebody who doesn't eat seafood, like many Seventh-day Adventists, and many people, some people just have allergies to seafood, what do? Well, Stacy has created an alternative recipe so you can have that experience without the seafood. Now, interesting, we were talking before the show started, and Stacy was sharing that this is something that is quintessentially Bahamian. When you go to somebody's house, it's like that appetizer, like how we, I guess, would have chips and salsa or something like that, or pigs in a blanket. These fritters are what they have. So we're going to be making that this evening. But something I wanted to say is that, what was I going to say? Well, they're very easy to make. These are fried, so this is a bit indulgent. You know, we try to stay away from that, but every once in a while is okay. Every once in a while is okay. So these are fritters, and you can't have a fritter without frying. I don't know if that's possible. Maybe you guys can figure that out. But anyway, welcome, Stacy.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here.
And we're going to get started because our time is already running, and I want to be able to taste them on camera.
Yeah.
So what we have, so you all have the recipe. We actually have the recipe, but we're going to call out the ingredients as though we're using the full amount. So tell me, what's the first thing we're going to do?
So the first thing we're going to do is 2 of the dry ingredients, the flour and the baking powder. You're just going to kind of mix them together. You just whisk those together because this will be added at the very end after you mix all the other ingredients. So you just take and if you don't have a whisk, you can just use a fork and just whisk those together and put it to the side. That's it.
Okay.
Then we're gonna kind of mix everything else up together. Now, you know, making this, I always tell people, don't stress yourself out. However you make it'll be great. You know what I mean? That's what I tell people because I found myself going to a lot of parties and events and they always had conch fritters and I'm like, well, y'all know I don't eat conch. So, you know, and then I found out later on that this is something that Seventh-day Adventists kind of like made up too. So corn just kind of fits right in. All right, so let's just get started. We're just gonna throw everything into the bowl. Now, another thing that people do, this is the celery. And another thing that people do, sometimes is they will put this into a food processor. So again, you can just kind of figure out how you like to do things. Some people like things ground down really fine. These are the tomatoes. I'm speaking a little fast, sorry.
Because you're used to doing a 15-minute segment.
Yes, I do a 15-minute cooking segment at home, so I'm used to kind of.
So what we put in here is one stick of celery minced, 1.5 tomatoes diced, and half of a small onion diced as well. And what she's saying is, of course, you can always make it finer, but you guys know that I love texture. So I make sure it's even, but I don't like things mushy. So mine things are chopped.
Well, yeah.
So that's a can of corn. That's a crisp corn. I've used a crisp sweet corn. And what's interesting about this recipe as well is that they use the corn, the water from the corn actually is a key ingredient in the
Yes,
recipe.
it's part of like seasoning, because typically in the conch fritters, they use the seafood water.
Seafood water.
The seafood water
to give it
as
that flavor.
Yeah, just another layer of flavor.
So we've added the thyme and we've added some salt.
Yeah.
Now we're gonna add the garlic powder and some black pepper.
And again, forgive me, I'm so used to moving so quickly. And you can see that that's a good bit of time. In the recipe, it calls for a quarter cup of thyme,
Which
but
I thought was like
it is a lot. That is a lot.
Especially if you're somebody like I love thyme, and a lot of island people are used to the flavor of thyme. If you're somebody who's not,
Right.
I can see how that would be a little bit.
And so kind of adjust these. It's very forgiving. You kind of adjust it to your particular taste. So this is also a very important ingredient is tomato paste. And if for some reason you don't have tomato paste, you can use anything else. This recipe is very forgiving. So we're going to just kind of mix this in a little. I put a little of the corn water at this point. That helps to break down that tomato paste. And you just kind of mix this in. This is so easy and so quick. And again, like I said, a lot of parties that you go to, this will be the first thing. People are walking in the door and they hear them and smell the fritters frying. So this will be the first thing everybody's kind of munching on while they're waiting for the food to be ready. All right, so as you see, now you gotta add your hot pepper to this recipe. So what pepper?
So this is wary Guyanese pepper. So I did one wary pepper, but I took out the seeds. And then for those of you, reach over here, those of you who are in the know, I did half a teaspoon of this stuff, matooks. So that's in there as well. Matooks and little wary pepper.
And Bahamians typically would either use bird pepper, which is a little tiny red pepper, or a habanero pepper or scotch bonnet. So that's what they would use cut up. And depending on who's making it, honey, sometimes they throw the whole thing in with all the seeds and everything. It gets to be a bit much. I'm not a super lover of pepper, so I'm very careful with that. So we're gonna add a little more of the corn water at this time. And we'll get that mixed all in. And then we start to mix in the dry ingredients. So you see you kind of have the wet ingredients there. There's some people that use milk in there, so use evaporated milk, but of course we're making a vegan version. So we're gonna slowly mix in this.
Now, is there a way to make these gluten-free? Have you ever tried to do that? Could you use like chicken flour, do you know? So because I'm wondering because you're not using egg, so the flour is acting as a binder somewhat. That'd be interesting to try and see if we could do it without chicken flour.
And knowing you will be able to do that. You're so adventurous in your cooking.
So it's all coming together and our oil is heating up. There was an interesting point that Stacy made about frying, that you want to get your oil up high to get it really hot, but then drop it down. Because you don't want the outside to get fried and burnt and the inside is still soft. So
you can see how I'm mixing this. This is supposed to be, nice and tacky. I'm actually gonna add a little more liquid. I'm gonna add a little water to this. Because it should be able to scoop up with a spoon. And again, this is one of those recipes that no one ever really wrote down. So this was kind of passed down through the generations of, just put a little bit of, even some really some chefs in the Bahamas that I've asked, like, is there an actual recipe for corn fritters? They're always like, for fritters. And they're always like, it's just a little bit of it. Like, somebody needs to write that down. So I actually have a chef friend, Chef Wayne, who is he's writing a cookbook. Okay, I'm sorry. He's going to be writing a cookbook. And he says that he's really going to, of course, he'll add these in and make sure that this is one of those recipes. So I think this is kind of the consistency that you want.
It's like a thick paste.
Yes.
Okay. So you want it just to hang on your spatula. You don't want it to drip off. So it needs to have
Has a little bit of body to it. Yeah, but not too thick that, And then from there, it literally is just as simple as taking a spoon like this, and then we use another spoon and just drop it into the hot fat. So we're gonna make sure that that fat is nice and hot. See? You think it's hot enough? Okay, she's like, we'll see. But we always do like a little test. You can just put a little bit in and see if it's ready. So almost, I think just a little bit longer. Yeah, so the Bahamas is so rich in so many traditions in terms of foods. But, you know, like most, you know, Caribbean cultures, a lot of our food, I think part of it is because we're so incredibly close to the United States. There's so many of those influences that have come in, and a lot of our food now is very processed. So, you know, so much of it is not healthy. When my mother was growing up in the Bahamas, see, we hear that sizzle, so we know that it's ready. So when my mother was growing up in the Bahamas, everything was, you know, freshly made. There wasn't a whole lot of processed foods. And so, okay, so we're just gonna literally just spoon it into the fat, just like that.
So that looks like it's about a tablespoon and a half. Now, could you make those larger if you wanted to?
Yeah, there's some people, you know, just literally depending on whose house you go to or what restaurant you go to. Some are very large, and then some are really small. People just make them kind of small depending. Sometimes, as you know, if the crowd is a little bigger than you're anticipating, you'll be over someone's house and they're like, "Oh man, the fritters are real small," because you know it's a little more. The crowd is a little bigger than you expected.
So what other vegetables do you think that we could use inside? I mean, I know we said corn, but there are some people who have a corn issue. So
yeah,
what did you use?
I've done the whole gamut. So like broccoli chopped up really fine. Scallion also tastes really good in this recipe. You really can be as creative as possible because the key to this, it really is that it is a seasoned batter. That's really what this comes down to, a seasoned batter that's deep fried. And we know, you know, deep fried stuff does taste good. That's the reason why we do it. So you can be as creative as you want to be. You have to have the flour. So no matter what kind of flour you use, you have to have the flour, and then you have to have the baking powder because it needs to, you know, puff up. Okay. You need that agent to get it nice and light.
Okay. So you all see how easy this is.
Yeah, it's really simple. I just make sure they don't touch one another because they will stick together.
And you want to be careful not to crowd the pan because when you put too many in, it's going to drop the temperature of the fat, and then you have things that are soaking up oil rather than frying. But so far, these look great. Turn it down.
I'm gonna turn it up. Okay, so is that right? Okay. Yep, so, you know, this is always fun. And then the sauce, I love that we're gonna use some, this is your jerk.
This is actually a guava jerk sauce that I made.
Nice, okay. So yeah, that's fantastic. I think that your maple jerk sauce would also be good with this because like wings, this is something that really tastes good with sauce. One of the things I love about Cynthia, I call her a saucier. I don't know if that's a real word, but Cynthia makes the best sauces. And so this recipe really just needs a good sauce to go with it. So whatever flavor you want to carry in that sauce will be good. So any of your sauces I think would really be good with this. For a party, it's always, you know, really, really nice. So what, like a lot of people will kind of flip them halfway through.
Those are good. And of course, if we were like really going for it with a deep fryer, these probably be done by now because they're totally submerged in oil. But we're trying to be a little, you know, we're trying to go kind of center field with these. But they look great. They look great. Now, you know, we could even use, even though I kind of like discourage people against it, could we use like vegetarian scallops?
Oh, absolutely. Now that's really, really Bahamian. So in the Bahamian culture, vegetarian scallops are the substitute for it. And there are people who have tasted, they make conch salad. That's a really big thing, which is basically like a ceviche. So they use lemon or fresh lime and orange and tomatoes, green peppers, red peppers, a lot of hot pepper, chopped up, and onion, did I say onion, chopped up with the conch. And literally people have been to my house. Now I don't make it, but a friend of mine makes it very well. And people have been to my house and tasted our version, of vegetarian conch salad and didn't know that it wasn't conch because it's apparently chewy, just like conch. Because I've never tasted real conch, but people who have, it's like it's the same consistency.
Wow.
So definitely you can use this with vegetarian scallops.
Okay, so you all know if you want to have more of, if you want to try to fool somebody, you can just use the vegetarian scallops and mince those and use those in place of the corn.
Yeah, you mince them just about the same size as we had or like a kernel of corn, about that size, because that's one of the things in the Bahamas is like they call them conch fritters, meaning you can really taste that conch, feel that piece of a good sized piece of conch that they put in there. Because there's some places that you go and they're like, you couldn't even find that conch in that fritter. So that's you want to have it where it's a good size. I'm just taking it.
And that is something, because I've had like my husband is Haitian, and Haitian patties are like the best things ever. It's basically like they use fish in their patties, but the pastry is like a croissant basically. Like it's so amazing. But they're a little. It literally will be this big, and they'll be like this much inside of it. So I hear what you're saying. Like you want, if somebody's eating this, you don't want it to be dough.
Right.
You want to make sure there's an even amount of mix-ins in addition to the dough.
And as a chef, I didn't even have to tell her this, how she consistently, the size of all of the herbs that she cut up, or the vegetables that she cut up, they were all even in size. So, you have your tomatoes, so they were all pretty much the same size as the kernel. And you can really cook them as, dark as you want them. I like mine pretty brown. I just flip them a couple of times so they kind of are cooked evenly on both sides.
So while she's finishing that up, I love to plate, so I'm going to get that.
This is one of the things I love about
start to get my plating together. And if anybody who's island, avocado, zaboka, pear, we use it on any and everything. So you look for an excuse to use avocado. So that's what I'm doing.
She's gonna make me get fancy when I go home. I'm gonna have to plate my fritters and make sure they look all good. We're just gonna flip them again. And again, like she said, if you're deep frying, then they just go into that hot fat in just a few minutes. But you do want to make sure that inside is done. That is critical to make sure that the inside of the fritters are done. And there's some people who make this completely different. So like I'm saying, just make this your own. Have fun with it. Experiment, try different things. The good thing about it is that it's such a flexible recipe.
Yeah. I mean, the way that you've shown us to make it, it seems like it's pretty foolproof.
Yeah. And you can actually use any of the, vegetarian meats in here as long as you chop it up, really fine. But definitely scallops is the number one substitute for conch in the Bahamas. These are almost done. I just want to get them a little browner and to make sure that the inside is cooked. I love that you made the guava sauce because guava is like our national fruit.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And our dessert is guava duff. Our national dessert is guava duff. And so guava sauce is a really great idea.
I love making things that are like, you all know, sweet, salty. I like every single, like when I take a bite of something, I want to have all 5 flavors in there. So that's what this sauce is, and I'm really excited.
And Cindy always teases me because when we go out to eat, I'm like, what am I tasting this? What am I tasting? I'm always trying to figure out the flavors of things. We both like that, layers of flavors. Even in my cooking show, I tell people, get those layers of flavors because that makes all the difference in the experience with the food.
It does, and it also negates the use of a lot of salt. And that's one thing we always talk about here. We went through it rather quickly, but that's okay because you all have the recipe. But let's see what it says. We use, it said 2 teaspoons of salt.
Yeah, and that's a lot.
You may or may not use that much, but for the batter, how many servings do you think we're gonna have?
We're gonna, even with us having a recipe, I mean, this is a good amount. Yeah, that recipe calls for a lot. And I do have to tell you that I had to get a friend to help me with this recipe because like I said, this isn't really like a written Bahamian recipe. So some of these ingredients, that's a lot. 2 teaspoons of salt would be a lot for me to cook with.
But it says or to taste. Yeah, it says or to taste. But as she is saying, the tomato paste is gonna add a rich, deep umami flavor to it, which negates the need for a lot of salt. We're using the corn water, and even if it's a low sodium can, there's still some sodium in there. So I'm anticipating this tasting very, very good.
So that's, if you look at the color on them now, you can see that's pretty much the color like that I like mine to be, have a nice little brown.
Deep golden brown.
Yeah, on them. And then, so they're nice and crispy. So we can probably take these out. Oh, sorry about that. Let that drain on the paper towel.
Those look great.
Yeah, they look really good.
So we have our fritters done, and they look great. I'm just gonna cut one so you can see what they look like inside. Now, actually, when I was watching Stacy fry these, I was a little concerned because I felt that she was frying them maybe too long. But her point for doing that is, you said, what was it? What was the guide? You said low, high fat,
Oh, yes,
something?
hot fat, low fire.
Hot fat, low fire. So you do that because you want the crispiness, and if you could hear, they're nice and crispy, but they're cooked in the center. You don't want to bite into it and it's like doughy and raw. So
that's like a bad thing when you go to somebody's house and their fritters are raw on the inside. It's like, those fritters are not good.
These are delicious.
Huh?
Has a crunch, perfect crunch to it.
So what we're gonna do? That heat, that very pepper, yum.
We're just gonna plate these because we always like to have a pretty plate. I'm gonna put a little avocado on the side for color.
That is good.
No avocado or zavoka. And so I have my guava jerk sauce that I've made. It's a creamy guava jerk. And this is just gonna drizzle across the top. And you could obviously.
So good. I want you to know when you come to my house, my fritters do not look this good.
Now, you know, I'm doing this for a picture, but obviously you would likely serve it on the side so people can take as much as they want.
And what people do is they just have like a little plate, and then your fritters go on your plate, and you get a spoon, and you spoon the sauce on the side, and you just dip it.
Yep.
But look how fantastic that looks. Oh my goodness. Yum, yum, yum.
Yep. Yummy. And I'm gonna leave that so we can take pictures, but I'm gonna get a little container so we can.
We're gonna.
So we can
be classy about. Okay, sorry.
So we can yum. But yeah, we made half of a recipe, and this made a good amount.
Yeah.
There's 5 in here, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So with a can, you've got at least enough for, you know, I mean, these are the kinds of things that I can imagine people.
Yeah.
They're gonna eat 4 or 5 of them.
Yeah.
So let's see how this.
Oh yeah.
Oh, Stacy.
Oh, that's so good with that sauce.
You know, this is a great recipe. As I said, it's fried, but it's chock full of great stuff. I would try maybe zucchini in this would be nice, like a fried zucchini fritter.
Now, if you could use the zucchini, dial back on the water a little bit, because zucchini is going to give off that water.
Right. Yeah, these are really good.
That sauce is amazing.
Thank you.
I keep telling her she has to bottle her sauces. She makes the best sauces.
That's good. So, everyone, these are Bahamian corn fritters. They are the healthier, veganized version of conch fritters. And now let me tell you something about seafood, because a lot of people eat seafood and they think that it's a better option. And many people don't know that seafood is actually very high. Well, it's high in cholesterol.
Yes.
So people eat it and they're wondering, why do they still have high cholesterol? It's because seafood has cholesterol. Any animal product is going to have cholesterol.
Right.
So while it may not be as bad as a steak, you're still not in safe territory. So try corn fritters. Can we get a, oh yeah, here we go. Corn fritters with my BFF.
That's right. Everything tastes good when we're eating it together.
That's
honey.
right.
Mm.
That's right. So thank you for being so patient and letting us get back online. I don't know what that was about. Of course, this recipe will be up and available for you on, well, it's available now on the Reclamation Project page and on my page, and we will see you all next week. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.